Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 12 tight end start or sit decisions for the 2022 fantasy football season. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. We're going to be talking about our sponsor of today's video, BetMGM, a little bit later. And if you have any questions about week number 12, please make sure you ask it down below in the comment section. So without further ado, let's get on into my week number 12 tight end start or sit decisions. We begin with the first game on Thanksgiving, the Buffalo Bills at the Detroit Lions. In this matchup, I'm willing to start Dawson Knox. Now, Dawson Knox had an incredibly slow start to the season. He was one of those tight ends that I banged the drum aggressively for. I was a big fan of Dawson Knox. He got the big contract prior to the season. I thought this was going to be yet another big year out of Knox. Things came out the gate incredibly slow. Recently, he has picked it up. He has been pretty hit or miss, but ultimately up against the Detroit Lions in an incredibly positive matchup, this could be his ceiling game. James Mitchell for the Detroit Lions, they utilize a couple of different tight ends, so all of them are going to be sits for me. When you utilize multiple different tight ends, it's always hard to pinpoint which one you want to start, and most of the time you don't want to start any of them because they kind of cannibalize each other. Next up, we got the Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. In this matchup, I'm going to be starting up Dalton Schultz. Now, Dalton Schultz was a guy that I really liked going last week up against the Minnesota Vikings. I thought that could be a higher scoring game. Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys fucking steamroll the Minnesota Vikings. That was a very easy game for them. Even though they did steamroll them, Schultz kind of shit the bed in that spot, but ultimately one down game doesn't really worry me. With Dak Prescott under center, I'm incredibly confident in Dalton Schultz, and I love his upside this week up against the Giants defense. The Giants are also one of those teams that utilize multiple different tight ends. Daniel Bellinger was really starting to kind of come into his own. He was looking really solid. Obviously, he got hurt all those weeks ago. Ever since then, they've kind of been doing a bit of a tight end by committee, so Tanner Hudson and the other Giants tight ends are sits. Next up, we got the New England Patriots at the Minnesota Vikings. For the Vikings, I am going to be starting the Viking himself, T.J. Hawkinson, going up against the Patriots defense. The Patriots defense is really solid, so this is definitely not a quote-unquote smash matchup for T.J. Hawkinson, but he didn't do the best last week. Obviously, the whole team played atrocious in that matchup up against the Cowboys defense. This should be a bounce back spot for Kirk Cousins, but we all know that Kirk Cousins struggles in games when they're not at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, and this game's at 8, obviously, so might struggle a little bit, but ultimately, I'm still firing up TJ Hawkinson with confidence. Hunter Henry was really good for a point in this season when Bailey Zappi the Zappinator was under center, but with Mac Jones, I simply just do not trust Hunter Henry. Next up, we move to the beginning of the Sunday slate with the Denver Broncos at the Carolina Panthers. Greg Dulcich has been on a little bit of a downward spiral over the last 2 games. His first 3 starts to his NFL career, he was on fire. He cooled down in that 4th game, and then last week he was just pretty decent up against the Raiders. I think this is a solid spot for him. Up against the Panthers, I don't really project this to be an ultra high scoring game, but Greg Dulcich is one of the key pieces in this offense. Jerry Jeudy probably not going to end up playing again. He was not practicing today on Wednesday, so I think Greg Dulcich has a solid opportunity to perform up against a Panthers defense that is a little bit underrated. Tommy Make That Ass Tremble, while he does have one of the best nicknames out of all of my nicknames for these fantasy football players, Tommy Tremble, as well as Ian Thomas. They use a couple of tight ends in Carolina, are all sits with Mono Man Sam Darnold under center. Next up, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Cleveland Browns. David Njoku had points in this season before he ended up getting injured, where he was a really reliable fantasy football option. After coming back for the injury, he hasn't necessarily been putting up crazy numbers. The Buccaneers isn't necessarily the best matchup either on paper, but when you're looking at the tight end position, there are a bunch of tight ends that I could see easily being top 12 guys, and David Njoku is one of them. Jacoby Brissett has played pretty decent thus far this season, and David Njoku has proven that with Jacoby Brissett that he is one of the key targets on this offense. I think up against the Buccaneers, we could see some solid utilization of David Njoku, and Njoku's upside might get even larger when Deshaun Watson returns next week up against the Texans. Cade Otton has kind of been an interesting case all year long because he is the number 1 tight end on this team. We've seen games where Brady locks into him in the red zone, but we've also seen games where he goes silent into the night like he's a fucking Christmas story. So at the end of the day, I think Cade Otton is interesting, but not start worthy for me up against the Browns. Next up, we got the Baltimore Ravens at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mark Andrews and Evan Ingram are going to be starts in this game. Mark Andrews is a must start every single week. Doesn't matter if he's playing the 85 Bears defense or if he's playing up against the Jaguars, who have been on a fucking rocky road all season long. We've seen games where the Jaguars defense looks downright amazing. Other games where the where the Jaguars defense shits the bed big time. Ultimately here, though, I do think Mark Andrews gets it done. Evan Ingram is another one of those fringe starters. We've seen greatness out of him, and then we've seen games where he's kind of almost invisible out there, and we don't see Trevor Lawrence feed him the ball, and that mostly could be attributed to the fact that Trevor Lawrence himself has been very hit or miss this season, leading to guys like Christian Kirk, who's incredible talent, and Evan Ingram, who has shown bright spots to kind of be a little bit not as reliable as someone who is on a team with a quarterback who is a little bit more consistent, but ultimately up against the Ravens, I think Ingram could get it done. He's not a guy that I'm banging the drum for, but I certainly would start him. Next up, we move to the Houston Texans at the Miami Dolphins. In this matchup, I like my guy Mike Licky on my Gesicki of the Miami Dolphins. The Texans defense is soft as baby shit, and as long as Mike Gesicki ends up catching a couple of balls, he should be start worthy. Obviously, when it comes to Mike Gesicki, you are hunting for that touchdown. You really need that touchdown for him to hit his ceiling, for him to have that big upside game. But if there ever was going to be a game where Gesicki can hop back in his bag and do that, it would be up against a putrid Houston Texans defense. Again, the Houston Texans have, all around, in my opinion, probably the worst defense in the NFL. And if in your opinion they aren't the worst, they're one of the bottom three defenses in the NFL. They are absolutely abysmally bad. So I think Gesicki has a solid game. Jordan Atkins has some competition around him. The Texans have benched Davis, Money, Mills, and they're going with Kyle Allen. Maybe that shoots some life into this team, but I highly doubt it, right? Kyle Allen isn't very good. And this game honestly feels like it might be a certified ass whooping by the Miami Dolphins. Next up, we got the Chicago Bears at the New York Jumbo Jets. Last week, Cole Kmet was a guy that I was really into for fantasy football. Obviously, he was coming off of a bunch of really good, solid performances in a row. And he doesn't necessarily play awful, right? He didn't sink your team last week, but he also didn't elevate your team like he was doing over the stretch before that. Now, the Jets defense is rock solid, and Justin Fields' availability is up in the air. If Fields ends up missing this game, then I don't want to really start Cole Kmet. Now, I know some people will be forced to start him, but I wouldn't be as confident, whereas if Justin Fields plays, even up against a stout Jets defense, I still think Cole Kmet could put up solid numbers. Speaking of benchings, the Jets have benched the MILF Hunter, Zach Wilson, former number 2 overall pick. Now he's not even the number 2 overall quarterback on the team because Mike White is starting. Cool Joe Flacco's the backup. And then Zach Wilson's going to be a healthy scratch. Yikes. So Tyler Conklin, we've seen some real solid out of him with Flacco. Kind of trials and tribulations with Zach Wilson. Some good games, some down games. Right now, I would just kind of be cooling off Tyler Conklin, maybe as a big game with Mike White, but I just don't know how much I trust that. Next up, we got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Atlanta Titans. But before we break down this game at the tight end position, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at BetMGM. If you're a brand new user to BetMGM and click on the link in the video description down below or in the pinned comment, we have a great offer for you. I'm going to show it off on the screen right now. All you have to do is bet $10 on any World Cup pregame money line. Any game. So for this example, we're going to go to the top of the screen, click on soccer with the little soccer ball next to it, and you're going to scroll down and just pick literally any game you want. I'm going to go with the highest favorited game for tomorrow, the biggest favorite, bet $10 on that. And as long as someone scores a goal during the remainder of the World Cup, you'll win your bet. So even if this team ends up getting, not blown out because the other team doesn't even score, no one scores, it's a draw. As long as someone scores later that day or in the rest of the World Cup, which is guaranteed to happen, you'll receive your $200 in free bets. So again, this is a guaranteed bet. It is a no-brainer. You are guaranteed to turn $10 into $200 in free bets. So make sure you guys take advantage of that right now before it disappears. It is going to disappear about 11 days from now. So make sure you take advantage of it right now before it's too late. Again, link down below in the video description and in the pinned comment. So for this game, in terms of the tight end position, I am going to be going with Hayden Hayden Hurst in this matchup. There seems to be a lot of optimism out of Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty, quarterback of the Bengals, that Ja'Marr Chase is going to end up playing in this game. I'll believe it when I see it ultimately. Do I think Ja'Marr Chase could play? Definitely. Am I 100% sure that that is going to happen? The answer is no. Fuck no, baby. Hayden Hurst, for me, up against the Titans defense. The Titans defense is a lot better than most people give them credit for. I don't think this is a smash matchup for him, but if Ja'Marr Chase doesn't play, the upside is definitely bigger. Even if Ja'Marr Chase does end up playing, I'm still fine playing Hurst, but my confidence in him really having that big game is significantly lower. Austin Hooper of the Tennessee Titans, the Late Titans, had a really solid game up against the Green Bay Packers last week, so I do think maybe we need to give a little bit more respect towards Austin Hooper, but ultimately one smash game doesn't make me want to just joust this guy directly into my lineup. Next up, we got the Atlanta Falcons at the Washington Commanders. In this matchup, I don't like any of the tight ends. The Kyle Pitts extravaganza is over. Kyle Pitts is done. So now, obviously, it's sad. I'm not trying to make fun of Kyle Pitts. This year was a disaster. It was a dumpster fire. It was fucking awful. If you had Kyle Pitts every week, you could do this mental gymnastics, and I did it too. Like, oh shit, Kyle Pitts is one of the best tight ends in the NFL, so let's start him. And then you get out there on Sunday, Marcus Mariota sails the ball 50 yards over the fucker's head, and you're just sitting there, just shocked, in awe. You don't even say anything. You're in your head, you're just thinking a million different things, and you don't even say anything. You're just like, in your head, you're just like, what the fuck did I just do? Because Kyle Pitts is such a talented player. The problem is the situation is atrocious. McCole Pruitt is a sit. Logan Thomas has had some interesting spots in his career. I think he's a good player. I think this is a good matchup, but ultimately, I just haven't seen much out of him this year to really feel confident in rolling him out. Next up, we move to the LA Superchargers at the Arizona Cardinals. This is the battle of two defenses that absolutely suck ass. Gerald Everett is going to be a sit for me. I do think if he ends up returning, there is some upside to him, but ultimately, Justin Herbert, the pervert, has just so many weapons to his disposal that at the end of the day, I just don't think I would want to start him. Trey McBride actually looked pretty decent last week in that matchup in Mexico City up against the Niners, but even if Kyler comes back, like, there's a lot of guys to throw the ball to. Hollywood Brown projected to play. Apparently, he's going to be on a snap count, snap reduction, snap, whatever the fuck you want to call it, a pitch count. That's what he's going to be on. I think Trey McBride could be like a sneaky guy deep down the stretch of the season when he gets his legs underneath him, but right now he's not a guy I'm looking to start. Next up, we move to the Las Vegas Raiders at the Seattle Seahawks. Foster Moreau is a must start, in my opinion, with Darren Waller out. Outside of, now that it's not just Waller that's out, also Hunter Renfrow, the king of the grit, is out. So they got to throw the ball to someone, and that's Devontae Adams and Foster Moreau. The Seahawks defense is a lot better than people give them credit for. To start off the season, they were a disaster. It was really bad. Their defense made Russell Wilson look competent, but now that we're kind of deeper into the season, it's week 12, we have seen their defense kind of steady up. They have one of the best rookies in the NFL right now playing defense, so I think that I need to give some more credit to the Seahawks defense. And again, the Raiders aren't these world beaters. The Raiders are pretty fucking bad, if we're being completely honest, but I'm still fine starting Foster Moreau as a top 12 guy. Noah Fant is pretty hit or miss because they also have Will Dissly on the team, and you never really know which guy is going to end up doing it. Gino does love throwing the ball to the tight end. He loves those tight ends, so I think Noah Fant is start worthy, but you are playing a risk with him. It is a little bit of a gamble. Next up, we got the LA Rams at the Kansas City Chiefs. Travis Kelce is a must start every single fucking week. The guy scored 3 touchdowns last week. He absolutely shit all over the LA Chargers. If I was a defense in the NFL and I knew that every single motherfucker on the Chiefs was hurt, Tony was hurt during the game. They don't have Juju. They don't have MVS. They don't have Hardman. What am I going to do? I am going to throw everyone and the kitchen sink onto Travis Kelce. But instead, Travis Kelce's wide open scoring touchdowns. It's fucking hilarious to see. Kelce's must start every week. Obviously, Tyler Higbee has been pretty shit, honestly, since the first couple of weeks of the season. But without Cooper Kupp, that has left a massive hole in this offense that Tyler Higbee is trying to fill. Matthew Stafford might play. He might not play. The backup options like Bryce Perkins, not the best. But I still think Higbee is a start-worthy player. Not a guy, though, that I'm ecstatic to start. Next game here, we got the New Orleans Saints going toe-to-toe with the San Francisco 49ers. Taysom Hill, I'm just kind of done with him at this point. We know what he is. He's a guy you start. You can see the upside from a mile away. You can see the game where he gets the ball, throws a touchdown, he catches a touchdown, he runs a touchdown, right? He does all these crazy fucking things, but ultimately, he is about as reliable as trying to fuck using a broken condom, so not very reliable at all. At the end of the day, I do think Taysom Hill is a good player. The upside is still there. It's glaring. It's right in front of your fucking face, which makes you want to start him every week. But ultimately, outside of a few decent performances, he's been pretty shit. Juwan Johnson is a start. Juwan Johnson's really coming into his own this year on the Saints with Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, under center. Juwan Johnson is scoring touchdowns at an incredibly high rate. He's just absolutely eating these defenses alive. Juwan Johnson up against a tough Niners defense. Again, not a guy that I'm going to bang the drum aggressively for, but I am starting him this week. George Kittle is obviously a start. George Kittle also went absolutely fucking nuclear last week, just like Travis Kelce did. Both those tight ends in prime time went insane. Another scenario where I do get why George Kittle is open, though, because, you know, they have Ayuk. They also have McCaffrey and Debo, so hard to stop all those guys. The 49ers are a sneaky, amazing team, even with Jimmy Garoppolo under center. Next up, we got the Green Bay Packers at the Philadelphia Eagles because you waited all day for Sunday night. Jack Stoll is now in for Dallas Goedert. Obviously, that sucks. Dallas Goedert was one of the best tight ends in all of fantasy football. Very reliable, despite the fact that they have such talented players around him like Miles Sanders, A.J. Brown, as well as the Slim Reaper, Devontae Smith. But obviously, he's out. Jack Stoll. No, we're not starting him. Robert Tonyan of the Green Bay Packers. He's one of those guys that's like a bottom-of-the-barrel start. You start him because you've looked through all the options, and this is the best. He's the best of the worst, basically. The Eagles' defense hasn't looked necessarily as A1 steak sauce as they looked early on in the season, but they're still one of the best defenses in all of the NFL. So Robert Tonyan is a guy that I'm going to start, but again, I'm kind of reluctantly starting him. They need to give the ball to someone, so I think Tonyan still has that upside. He's still got that dog in him. Final game here, we got Monday Night Football, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Colts, and would you believe it? The Colts have back-to-back primetime games. Next week, we get the Colts versus the Cowboys. How exciting. How exciting. I know I kind of gave you guys a bit of a tease there as I slowly broke that one down. Yikes. 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 Kylan Granson, he's a sit. Freiermuth is a start because he just gets so much volume in that offense. So you got to keep starting him. He's not like a guy that's super amazing every week, but you can see the upside because, again, he's just force-fed the ball by Kenny Pickett. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comment section. Make sure you check out our sponsor of today's video, BetMGM. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy.